this is my faithful Hewlett-Packard laptop. I love this, you know, with USB ports and a CD burner for burning CD-ROMs or even burning DVDs. And this, with its lovely large flat screen HD, it was quite revolutionary when they first started putting screens onto computers and making them portable. Before that, most computers you didn't have portable. Take for instance the Commodore PET or the Apple IIe, or many other computers that had a designated monitor to go with them. Certainly wouldn't be any good out and about. But things evolved and times changed. So who on earth thought it'd be a great idea to put one of the early micros with its own type laptop screen? Well, we're glad they did, because these are quite awesome little bits of devices. Starting with the first that came out, as far as I'm aware, the Omni 128 is a fantastic clone of a Spectrum with a nice screen on it and closes up quite nicely. Very portable indeed, even with a Spectrum Edge connector at the back there to plug other peripherals in. I'm not so sure where we'd plug the peripherals in. HDMI, which necessarily doesn't work, but on the side you've got your switches and your non-memory interrupt for bringing the menu up, and a place to slot your SD card. On the other side there are two more buttons and your TV control buttons, and that is my Omni. And then we got the Spectrum is actually in this case, because the case itself is called the ZX Levitator, and you can apparently put any Spectrum in there and it will power it via an internal battery, or you could even power it from the plug. Quite an interesting device, but once again it's quite a big bulky type build, but doesn't it look good? So yes, we both have two laptops for a 48K Sinclair Spectrum. Yeah, after all these years, 8-bit has found a way to become portable. So let's take a look at each one of these units, take a look at the pros and cons, and find out which one is the better of the two. Let's talk about and start with the Omni 128 laptop. Geordie from China built this concept quite a number of years ago, and when he manufactures these, he has to manufacture them in bulk, so he needs a certain amount of orders before you're able to retrieve one. What's the features on it? Well, there's quite a few features, to be fair. You've got built-in joysticks, which is none like the Spectrum. These are steel bars that go across the bottom there, which bend round, and that holds that on quite nicely indeed. You can also unplug this if you didn't want the screen, because it is an Omni. You get the Omni lead, which goes, the other end is a SCART lead, and you can plug it into your television, as long as you've got SCART lead fitting, that is. The HDMI, which I think was more of a possibility, but it's not actually used. Your audio's in and out, sound basically, and for loading and sound. And one's for loading and saving, and the other one's the sound left and right channel, sorry Shay. An edge connector, which is pretty hard to find anything that actually works on that, because it's not actually a Spectrum, it's a Spectrum clone. Your on and off switch in your power, and as you can see it's quite a bulky build really. It sort of angles down a little bit, that does. Then you've got two more functioning buttons at the back here, a red and a blue one, which I like. But yeah, it opens up, and when it opens up it looks the business. It's got a nice large screen with those volume controls down the side. We'll have a look at it in a minute. So let's power this on, and hopefully you'll get to see what actually happens. The display will power on. Yeah, you recognise the DivMMC device that's built into this automatically. We'll press the non-memory interbook button. Let's, shall we say, select a game. Some of these games are quite are all available. Let's try go for Gremlin. And about the Monty Christmas game. That's always a good one to try, isn't it? This should give us an idea of the sound. Yeah, it's got AY sound coming out of it. It's looking glorious. Yeah. So that is the Omni laptop, which I think is lovely. It's a great picture, by the way. I don't think that does justice on it. But yeah, what a lovely looking device. And of course, with it being an original Sinclair membrane and stuff like that, it looks fantastic. But the Omni is the best one for pairing this sort of thing with the screen's great. In fact, you can probably bolt that screen onto any Omni if you haven't got the screen, but the screens come separate. You can order them as well. Great device. Basically, it's a 128K computer capable of everything you need, and it's portable with a battery life of around about 6 to 7 hours if you're lucky. It doesn't last that long though. So let's compare this now to the Levitator. The ZX Spectrum Levitator is a more recent device. You may be wondering why the writing is upside down, because I didn't want to turn it that way up, because if you turn it that way up, it's the right way up when you open it up, but you're only looking at the back of the computer, because you'll be looking at the screen. So that's why that's printed on. It's got a magnificent 3D printed there. That is pure 3D printing, and didn't mess around either. You got the 3D printing on the bottom as well. Right, let's go through it. There aren't any buttons on the side of this one, so there's not a lot to see, or that side, and there doesn't look to be any joystick ports on it either. Well, that's because the computer that's in this is the real Spectrum. Now, you can put any Spectrum in here and it will be powered via the Levitator, because what the Levitator does, it levitates your computer. That's your battery indicator. You've got various buttons there, and that's a volume mainly, and power to power the power from out of the battery that's built into this to help power your system at the back. We'll turn it round. This is where it gets fancy. Ignore the real Spectrum, because we know what that's all about at the moment. Right, so you've got VGA output, you've got your composite, and you've even got a HDMI output, which means there's got to be a Raspberry Pi Zero in here to power all of this. You've got your sound in and out, load in, load out, or it could be external sound. I'm not 100% sure. Your on and off switch, and then this little bit here gives you a 9 volts output, because if you put your Spectrum in it, you will need to take your 9 volts from there and power your Spectrum via there. So that's just a way of powering your normal Spectrum. And then with this RF input, you take the RF output, if you haven't already composite modded it. If you've composite modded it, you'll take the composite and you'll stick it to there. And then that will feed the signal via HDMI into, that'll feed the signal via this small lead here into the screen itself. So it'll even turn your RF into a composite signal and feed the television without you having to do anything. It's an amazing little device. The power input port is just there, but as I say, it's not an actual Spectrum. It's a case that you put your Spectrum in, and in this case we've put our real Spectrum in. Notice on this, if you had your real Spectrum in here, your edge connector would be up about there, so it would be fairly lifted off the ground, which may cause a few issues, but we'll get into that in a moment. Let's start by powering it on. And the way you power it on, first of all, you need to press this red button at the back, switch it in to switch the device on, and you can see there's a light come on there and it's turned blue and the screen has lit up, but there isn't any signal until we turn the actual Spectrum on itself. But there is voltage now coming out there, so if I hold on the real Spectrum, there we go, and you'll recognise the carousel coming up in a minute, the Spectrum. Yeah, cool. Let's go straight for the Monty game, same tune. Now, first of all we need to do is to bring up some of this volume, don't we? By using these keys here. I think that's the volume. It's the green ones? Yeah. There we go. I would say on all, the screen, put it down a touch, is slightly larger on the Levitator because it's quite a big screen compared to the Omni. It's a lot bulkier, but it's got its downsides because these here, the brackets it sits on, if you notice, they kind of move a little bit. It looks like a little bit, I mean, it's been printed that way. Ideally these should have been made out of metal rather than PLA, maybe CNC'd a little bit, but yeah, but the printing itself is quality. Once again, the screen sits down slightly low, the resolution and the actual look of the screen is sharp. I would say it was as even as you could get with the actual Spectrum Omni, but the screen sizes are different. We need a side-by-side comparison, don't we? And then we need to check which one goes loudest. Stereo sound aggravation. Right, I'm going to turn the volume down on both of these. And as you can see, this one was actually at full volume. But yeah, so first thing you notice is this one, because of the underneath, is slightly higher. The screen size we're going to come to in a moment because I'm going to get the tape measure out and we're going to measure it. The resolution on both screens is excellent. I mean, pixel perfect sharp. You can alter the resolution. You can have scan lines and all the usual gizmos on it if you want by altering the settings either on the screen for this one or in the software on this computer to do so. Music is on. AY sound both of them provide is fantastic, and they're both portable. And as I say, I've had between 3 to 6 hours of battery life out on this. It's got two of those large vape batteries built inside and they're rechargeable via a recharging, you know, takes around about an hour and 10 to recharge. And the same with this one really, you can get around about 8 to 9 hours of battery life out on this with the real Spectrum in. That's with the real Spectrum, and it uses a lot less power than an actual Spectrum. But if you put an actual Spectrum in, you're only going to get between 2 to 3 hours. So you're not going to get that long. So you have a, depending on what computer you put in there, whether you put a Spectrum in, a Harlequin 128, Harlequin 128 will also shorten the amount of time that you get to play it, or whether you put the real Spectrum in. The real Spectrum is a lot less power consumption than the other two put together. That's why you get a longer battery life. But they do look both brilliant. Now, which one's got the bigger screen? Let's get the measure out. And I'm going to go old school measurements on this. So, take a look at this screen. That's exactly around about 8 inches via, I can't quite see, 4.5 inches. So that's an 8 inch by 4.5. It doesn't really matter because you're still using it in the aspect. You can change the aspect ratio to 4:3 on both of these. This one seems to do more standard. And the screen on this one is just 8 3/4 of an inch. So you can see you've got about, well, just over half an inch more. We'll change those measurements if you like to 5 1/4 inches. So yeah, this one has actually got the bigger screen. But which one goes loudest? We'll start with this one. And we'll go maximum volume. Yeah, it's not too loud, but it's loud enough for you to hear the music and hear the music quite well. Not bad at all. Let's try this one, and we'll keep this one on. And we're only halfway, and you can already see it dwarfs it. So it's a win for the sound. Volume on that is amazing. It's amplified it well. But it's also going to get on my nerves in a minute. So I would say about 50% of the way is about the same volume as this one. It still sounds a little bit louder, so it's probably less than that. Yeah, I'd say about 35 is even volume. Let's turn the volume up on both of them. I'm having to drop the volume on this one, and while I'm pressing the volume down, so let's have a look at the screen resolution. Oh, it doesn't look good. What are the keys? I forgot the keys. Oh, the ZX. Who thought a ZX was a good idea? Oh. It's got to be PL, hasn't it? What about this one? Let's move over. Gotta have a play. Show these skills. Oh, the beep's nice and clear. But it is the real Spectrum. Yeah. Oh. Could have died a few times there. Oh look, I walked through the actual presser then. Yeah, great little screen resolution on both of them. Even though that's in 4x3, that's not quite 4x3 true, but you can change that. But I tend to just put it so as I can see the whole screen. That screen size, I don't think it really matters. The sound though certainly is a notable difference. But the only real way to judge this is by putting an actual Spectrum in there and seeing how it sounds then, because the beeper, it will be down there underneath and maybe a little bit quieter. However, yeah, as you can see, it's quite flush. So I suppose now we need to open them both up and have a look at what's inside. Should we start with what we started with first? Yeah, we're going to go for the Omni 128. So the Omni 128, just like the Spectrum, has got 5 screws which basically are helping to hold the hinge on. Then you can remove the Omni itself, and that is the screen, which, you know, is nice, quite lightweight actually, not as heavy as you think. That's, you know, a bit of a pain to get back on. But now that we've opened this, let's just have a look inside, and there isn't a lot to see really. This is a more modern version of the Omni. There are other versions, but this is the latest one. There's those built-in batteries from me, just 2 there, and all the chips you need, including your SD card solution there, which I'm using the one underneath, your switches. So yeah, there's not a lot really. In fact, you could probably use this in there, because there is a SCART lead output as well, which is the back. I suppose you can just put that and turn the composite out of that to there. So that's basically the Omni taken apart. Yeah, so simple. It's got a Wi-Fi unit in as well, which I haven't used much of, and that will be your voltage regulator there. So yeah, and there's a coil, so that must be for generating the sound. I wonder if this actually generates all the voltages. I hardly doubt it. They're usually missing the 12. It's just usually a 5 volt output, but generally speaking it is by this guy actually, Retro Radionics. That's the person that builds these, and he builds them in bulk. I love this machine. I think it's an amazing build, and certainly is. It's got a nice bulky power switch, that's for sure. Now, interesting, if you notice at the back, that kind of sticks out a little bit. Not that you would ever need to use a peripheral in one of these, because you know, you've got your joystick ports and your your card there, and you know, you can poke the memory internally if you want to put hacks and pokes in to cheat on your games. But let's just, for the hell of it, and switch it off first, just like anything, see how a peripheral would actually insert into the back of this, and would it stay there. I'm not going to switch it on, but I think we'll get the general idea. Yeah, I don't think it would actually. If it's a standing up in, it doesn't even reach. The cable gets in the way, and you just, you know, you could just about force it. No, you couldn't even force it. And even if you could, when you open it, it's going to knock it back. You know, it's going to knock it out. So there's no point in trying to put a peripheral in the Omni 128. Let's have a look at the Levitator. The ZX Spectrum Levitator actually has sort of copper, or sorry, not copper, brass threaded inserts, but it's not easy because this is basically made so you can pull that out there and pull that out there, but the screen is permanently attached to that, so you can't really do any more than that other than flip it out the way, like so, and then you can take away whatever you want and put whatever. We'll put a real Spectrum in this to finish it off, to try it. So there's your Levitator. Basically that's it, your screen and everything. All the workings happen on the inside of here. Yeah, and these are the like little grips that hold it in place. One for each side. They are 3D printed, would have been better steel. And the same there, these act as grips to hold your Spectrum in place from the other side. And yes, I know it's still powered on, but there's an awful lot of screws in this thing. An awful lot of screws. We don't need to see what the screen is, but we'd like to see what's inside of there. So let's, first of all, let's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws before we can actually look in. As you can see, there's little places for the feet to sit. It's a good idea to do that, because that means the Spectrum will indeed sit flush. And we can get a real Spectrum to show you. This is my real Spectrum. It's one of those yellow board ones. But there we go. Yeah, it does sit nicely there. It does sit nicely in place and flush as well. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, we can use a real Spectrum on this, so we might as well do so. But yeah, let's have a look inside, shall we? I'll just get the screws out with a bit of magic. Okay, so if you notice, even underneath the Spectrum, he's done the Levitator sign in 3D print, so that's quite amazing. And now we can take that off, and there it is. There's not a lot to it, is there? Huge battery, a great little circuit board there. It's stereo as well. There are twin stereos there, and then of course you've got your keys and your dashboard. So let's take a closer look, shall we? And you can see that it's just a clever little device. It's well packaged in there. A lot of empty space. You could argue that maybe he could have even put a bigger battery in, but yeah, there's not much to it. The ZX Spectrum Levitator. Oh yeah, it's just glorious what it can do for what it hasn't got inside it. But yeah, good to see the speakers are actually pointing down, so there must be some sort of vented grill there, and there's a grill that goes across the bottom. We can show you that in a minute. I think I did point it out. If I didn't, I'm going to anyways. I'm going to point that out to you. Yeah, as you can see, there are little brass inserts in each one of these, 3D printed, obviously done with a hot glue, soldering iron, and pushed in, so they're sort of melted into place. But that's pretty good because they're all machined screws then, and they're all the same standard length. But yeah, I mean, he's really packed them in quite well, to be fair. But yeah, cool. Oh, and there's a coil there, so that's the power regulation we can see. And if I'm right in thinking, that looks like a Raspberry Pi of some sort, possibly. No, I can't tell from here. It's too many leads in the way. I'll have to take a closer look. I can see there's a bit of soldering going on just there. But yeah, let's put this back together and get it all assembled and see how it looks with a proper Spectrum in. Okay, fully assembled now with a real Spectrum inside it. As you can see, I have powered the Spectrum separate and I've used the composite output which I've on this Spectrum, and it's got into there. In order to do that, you do need to use some of these settings. For instance, if you press the white button, it will bring you a menu up, and use the yellow buttons to scroll up and down the menu to choose which output which input you're using before it feeds the output to the screen. Now, for instance, we wanted to hear the sound, so I've built this little program, and as well predicted, it's very quiet indeed because the speaker is covered up. Because the speaker's there and this is now sitting flush to the board, you've dampened the sound quite a significant bit, which is a bit of a drawback, I'm afraid, if you're using an original Spectrum. But yet the Levitator will power the Spectrum itself, but the Spectrum uses a bit more voltage and it probably wouldn't power it for very long. And another note is that this output here, which is what you'd basically plug a lead into to go into there, is got to be reversed in polarity, because the actual output on the Levitator is centre pin positive, and I can prove that to you. For instance, you can see my multimeter of madness there. We'll just put that up so you can see it. There is a stand on here. There we go. Multimeter of madness. Get the light out of the way. And so there's your red lead, which is the centre. We'll put that into there like so. And then the black lead is negative. And you can see it's 9.9 volts, which means it's centre pin positive. Well, if you know anything about Spectrums, they're centre pin negative. So if you was to power that directly without reversing the polarity, you'd probably end up killing your Spectrum, which is not a good thing to do, because I've done enough of repairing the Spectrums lately to last a lifetime. Anyway, that's another story. Interesting then. What about peripherals? Well, yeah, with a Spectrum you will need to use a peripheral, you know, if you want a joystick, etc. Or in this case we're going to use the interface 1 to 8, the multiface 1 to 8. How are we going to be able to put a peripheral in there? I've left these out at the moment. They're the clips that hold it in place for a reason. So let's try and push that into there. First of all, I need to switch my Spectrum off. We're going to have to lower the screen down. It doesn't go far enough back, and yet again it doesn't reach in. So unless it's a flat, you know, something. What have we got that's flat? What have we got that's flat? I've got a number of things that are flat, but nothing to hand, would you believe it, as always. Yeah, unless it's a flat thing, the standy up type you can't use. Is that a word? Standy up type? Like, for instance, you're not going to get that into there, because as soon as, I mean, with that as far back as soon as you open that out anyways, it doesn't reach. There's just no way. And none of these will reach. So, how would you get around it? I mean, we've got a multiface 1 to 8 that wouldn't reach, that doesn't reach. Let's see if I can find something that will reach. The only thing I could find is this. Just make sure the Spectrum's switched off. But it's going to be a little bit flimsy, I'm afraid. It's not going in very well at all. Because that's quite wide with the power lead going in there. So, yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that this is a viable solution. Yeah, because you push a joystick in there, it's not very good at all. Right, let's get it all back together and give you the final summary. So, let's go for the summary. What do I think? Yeah, they've both got the quirks, they've both got the drawbacks. I did mean to show you something as well. They're both portable. Can you see that? Yeah, stereo speaker. But you've got a shed load of wires hanging out the back. And it's a shame that the screen is not fully detachable from the main base itself. So you could just use the base if you wanted to power your Spectrum. That would have been a good idea. Alas, that's not the case. But for sound quality, that is superior, because the sound in this is actually coming out the speaker at the back. For form factor, you know, it's a lot shallower, and there's only one wire coming out the back, not a maze of wires. This is the Omni itself wins on that, because you haven't got to plug a peripheral in, because everything you need is there joystick wise. With the real Spectrum, obviously you can use your USB joysticks to plug into the back, but for a normal Spectrum it's a bit of a drawback, especially if you want to use anything like an interface or whatever. So yeah, bigger screen, both great screens, both great size, great resolution. Which one is my favourite? And I'm going to do it by giving it the Manic Miner rating. So for sound quality, we'll award that for the Manic Miner over there. Screen resolution's equal, you know, slightly larger, fine, yeah. For form factor and looks, I would say that this one looks better. So it's a Manic Miner rating over there. For peripherals that need to be used, you can't really use a peripheral on that. You can't really use a peripheral on that, but then you don't need to on that, because you've got built-on joysticks, where this one, if you're using the Spectrum, you haven't, and you will need to. So I'm going to award that over there because the joysticks are built on. And I would say that there's only one way to judge this now. We've got a floating Manic Miner. Which one do I prefer out of the two? Fantastic 3D printing, great, but it is only a Levitator. It does a remarkable job of making it portable. It is great for battery life. The battery life with the Omni as well, because it's going to last quite a while. You know, it's going to last quite a while. You put a real Spectrum in there, your battery life won't be as good. It's going to gazump the power a little bit. The 7805 voltage regulator does waste 95% of its energy into the heatsink, which could be quite a bit of an issue. And on the issue too, with the heatsink down there, can possibly cause warping of the print there. I should think it would do eventually. And because that's got steel brackets here, as opposed to printed brackets with these inserts in, which you can change around by the looks of it. Don't know why they was inserted that end. I think it would have been better just to have left it plain black if it's just a clip for holding the Spectrum in. I'm going to go with the Omni 128K as my favourite, but let's not take it away. The Levitator is a nice bit of kit, and the Omni, yeah, it's just a nicer looking bit of kit. So yeah, 3-1. I'd say the Omni wins, but for looks and great 3D printing quality, the Levitator certainly does levitate your Spectrum. What do you think? Leave your comments in the comments below to which one you prefer. Let's have a back view to finish, yeah? Yeah, it's like a lot less bother with a hover almost, isn't it? Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Retro Robbins.